Okay, let's see what's going on in the One Piece news today. Onigashima is a muffin. Boob news, boob news. Yeah, I'm making another video about that later. Stampede's coming out. Oh, we got a name for Fujitora's Devil Fruit. So, yeah, we talk about that, I guess. Okay, so Fujitora, Admiral Fujitora, I should say, he has a title, although he seems like a pretty laid-back dude. I don't think he's the kind of guy that would really get upset with titles. You know, if you're, like, walking in Marine HQ and you accidentally just address him as regular Fujitora instead of Admiral Fujitora, I don't think he's gonna, like, you know, pin you to the ground and cause a giant crater to open up and get you sucked into the bowels of hell. I don't think he would do that. Now, if you cheat him at a game of dice, then he opens up the hell portal, but before that, not really a big deal. Alright, so, up until this point in the series, you would look at Fujitora as the gravity guy. He's the dude that showed up and is like, yeah, okay, devil fruits are cool and all that stuff. Oh, you can control electricity. Oh, that guy can control sand. Oh, what can you do, Doflamingo? Oh, you control string? That's cool. I control gravity! You know, you're waiting for it, because whenever the character in a shonen manga pops in with the gravity manipulation, starts ripping meteors out of orbit, and causing apocalyptic level events, that's when you know shit just got real. I'll always remember the scene in Naruto when Madara shows up, he's revived, and it's like, oh my god, what's the first thing he's going to do? And then like hundreds of ninja all looked up at the sky at once, realizing that their lives were meaningless as this giant rock just starts hurtling toward them. And, you know, at that point, what do? Really? You're just like, well, I mean, we're done. I'm literally watching my life tick down as this giant rock is slowly approaching the ground. I mean, we could maybe run away, but even if we manage to escape the giant rock, the subsequent shockwave and the damage of the environment, the tremors, they would take us out anyway, so guess it's over, right? So, that's the situation. You know what? I love that scene with Fujitora and the meteor, because not only Law, he didn't expect that coming. Law was kind of looking up and he's like, oh, are you kidding me? But even Doflamingo and Fujitora, at that point, I mean, they weren't like best friends, but they were on the same side at that point anyway. And so you had that moment where Doflamingo looks up and he sees the meteor, and even Doflamingo's like, well, shit, that's okay, this just got real. You know, like, even Dofi was starting to panic. He's like, yeah, I know, I'm the mastermind behind this whole thing, and I'm the king of Dressrosa, and I'm super powerful, but a freaking meteor G? Really? And he throws up the strings to cut it, and Law opens up his, can I make a meteor-sized room? Well, I guess we're about to find out, you know, and he opens it up, and they all manage to survive, but man, that was a crazy scene. You know, if I'm ever gonna do like a top 20, top 30 best scenes in One Piece, like best moments, that's definitely going to be on there. I've been throwing around the idea to do a video like that for a while, but there's like 21 plus years of moments in One Piece. Like, it's gonna take a while to narrow it down to the top 20. I still have to get through all the Paramecia entries in the Devil Fruit contest, but okay. We got the name of Fujitora's fruit, and it's not the Gravi no Mi, which is, I was kind of disappointed by, because that would have been a cool name for a fruit. But no, it is the Zushi-Zushi no Mi. Zushi referring to the sounds of, like, heavy footsteps. You know, like, you know, that's Zushi. Probably not as imposing when I do it, but imagine you're, you know, traversing the African savanna, and in the distance you hear a rumbling, and you look off, and you see a herd of elephants, you know, stampeding towards you. You know, that kind of Zushi, that kind of stomping. I want to visit Africa someday. Do I have any African fans that can show me elephants if I ever visited Africa? That would be cool. So anyway, yeah, not exactly the same thing as implying gravity manipulation, like just heavy footsteps, but think of it the same way as, like, Robin's fruit, because some of the devil fruits, you know, some of them are direct in what they do, you know, like Luffy's Gamu Gamu no Mi, his rubber fruit, that pretty much is self-explanatory. But then you get Robin's fruit, the Hana Hana no Mi, which is the flower fruit. When you hear the name of the fruit, it doesn't immediately indicate, like, oh, obviously she has the ability to sprout any of her limbs, her eyes, her nose, her ears, any part of her body on any surface and make clones of herself. Obviously, you would infer that just from the name flower fruit alone, right? Of course not. Even like Eneru's, you know, Goro no Mi. I think Goro just means like rumbling, you know, but the rumbling of thunder. So that's where that comes from, right? So there's a few of them that are not, you know, directly referencing their powers, and Fujitora is one of them. but it's still gravity manipulation. And I even went back and looked at all the scenes with Fujitora, because I'm like, okay, what if it isn't gravity? Because the only thing we really have to go on that it's gravity manipulation is Fujitora has an ability. It's kind of like his main skill that he uses. Whenever he takes out his sword and uses his power, the Zushi-Zushi no Mi, he calls it his Gravi-Ito, or just literally translated as gravity sword. Because whenever he activates this power, he always unsheathes his blade first. He'll unsheath his sword, and it'll send up, like, gravity waves or whatever into the sky, and then the meteor falls down. Or he'll use it as a shield to repel objects. That's actually what he used when the meteor was coming down on himself. Because remember, it's like he's summoning a giant meteor to try to crush Law, but Doflamingo's also there, and he's also there too. So Doflamingo used his string to cut up the meteor, Law used his room to cut it up, and then what did Fujitora do? Well, Fujitora just created like a sphere of repelling gravity energy, and that also bounced away the meteor, so he was okay when the meteors, touched down as well. So, I was thinking though, like, beyond the Gravi-Ito, I don't know if he ever directly stated, like, my ability is to control gravity. I don't think there was anything like that, so people have thrown out there, maybe it's not gravity, maybe it's more like telekinesis, like, it's a fruit that allows him to just lift them up with his mind and then drop them, but I'm pretty sure Oda had gravity in mind. Okay, I have a few examples why I think it's definitely gravity. For one thing, in the anime, it's purple. I mean, come on now, gravity is purple. It's just like fire is red, water is blue, gravity is purple. Come on, guys, no. But, the fact that he summons, like, those little, like, rings in order to, like, grab an object, it really did seem like Oda was going for, like, okay, he's sending out an energy that whenever it comes in contact with an object, the gravitational pull of said object increases immensely, alright? And it's always with that radiation that comes out of his sword. So I'm just gonna assume, yes, it is gravity. Now, it works a little different. I even considered it maybe being similar to, like, Miss Valentine's Day or Mach-Weiss's fruits, because their fruits allow them to go, like, super light and then super weighted. In Miss Valentine's case, she could go up to, like, 1,000 kilograms. In Mach-Weiss's case, he could go up to, like, 10,000 tons, like an insane degree, okay? Mach-Weiss has the superior version of Miss Valentine's Kilo no Mi. So I was thinking, maybe it's something similar to that, just instead of affecting yourself, he can affect anything else. Because Fujitora, I don't think he can change the gravity of himself. I don't think we've seen him, like, flying around or floating. Whenever he wants to do that, he has to, like, create, like, a rock or a piece of rubble, decrease its gravitational pull so it starts to lift up and he can ride on top of that. But I don't think we've ever seen him, like Fujitora, like, gravity man away! Woo! And then he starts to fly off into the distance. That'd be funny, but I don't think we've seen that. So I was thinking, okay, well, maybe it's like a super weighted, and he can control the weight of things. Maybe that could be the thing. But I'm still debunking on gravity. I mean, I guess it could be something else, but I'm definitely hedging my bets on it being the gravity fruit. It's just that Oda, maybe the Gravi no Mi, it didn't fit the naming structure that Oda always does with the devil fruits, because they have to meet like a certain requirement of like syllables and the way you pronounce it. That's why, like, Perona's fruit, you'd think Perona's fruit would just be called, like, the ghost fruit, because she summons ghosts, and she can turn into a ghost. But no, it's the Holo no Mi, because it has to meet, like, a certain criteria, the way that he structures the names. So, maybe the Japanese word for gravity wouldn't have fit in that, so he had to just go with something else. And it's like, oh, Zushi-Zushi, because it's heavy stomping, so he can lift things up and then crash them down, and that's it. So, with that being the case, we're just going to go forward now. Another popular theory that I've been seeing, and I'm pretty sure this was just debunked, because the whole reason we found out the name Zushi-Zushi no Mi, I'm just thinking of Zushi from Hunter x Hunter every time I say that word, so if you're the only one that's thinking that, you're not alone. But we got the name of it in that Vivre Card Databook, and I think that kind of debunked the rumor that it's the sword that has the devil fruit. A lot of people have been throwing that out there. Not just because it doesn't seem to affect Fujitora, but every time he draws his blade, that's when he activates it. He'll draw his sword and summon up like the rays to go up and grab the meteor. Or he'll grab his sword and direct his gravity rays on another human and like pin them to the ground. And he can actually continue, the gravitational effect to the point where they are literally like in a crater. Like that's the point. Like it's a really powerful fruit if you are a swordsman, because you figure he clashes with, like, Zoro, like, sword clash. Like, you're pretty strong. Yep, I sure am. And then, boom! And then you just get crushed into the ground, and just boom, boom! And then, you know, if you're Zoro, you're fine, because you work out, you're buff, you know, like, I, got gravity pounded into the dirt about 40 feet down, but no biggie, I work out. You know, we're good. But if it's anybody else, they would immediately get their bones crushed into freaking just, like, powder, you know, if that were ever attempted, right? So, yeah, people throwing out, maybe it's the sword that has the power, and that's why he uses it. But, I think something like that would have been mentioned in the Vivre Card Databook. You know, like maybe Oda wants to keep it a secret for later. It would be actually something we've never seen before, an object having a fruit that wasn't a zone, because every time we see an object having a fruit, like Lasso, who is Mr. Four's gun, or Funkfried, who's spawned him sword, it's always a zone. Lasso was a dog, and then Funkfried was an elephant. So, I mean, I'm assuming you could put Paramecia and maybe even Logia powers inside of objects, but we just never seen that before, so maybe Oda wants to keep that a secret and then reveal it later on. So it's possible, but I feel like something critical information like that probably would have been shared in the Vivre Card, you know? Like, let me put it another way. If Oda was gonna put it like that, like it was in the sword, why did he bother revealing the name in the Vivre Card, but not the fact it was in the sword? You think he would have just kept that all a secret until we found out? Like, Fujitora reveals to Ryokyogu, like, they're chatting at Reverie, and be like, oh, by the way, yes, I have a sword that ate the Zushi-Zushi no Mi. Whatever, you know? And also, Fujitora has connections to Vegapunk, so you could also make that there. Like, you know, Fujitora didn't always have his gravity powers. You know, I don't know if he did or not, because he was enlisted in the world government through that draft. You know, he wasn't a Marine. He was just a regular civilian somewhere in the world. I imagine Fujitora as, like, the iconic blind swordsman, you know, who's just like a hermit, and he's hanging out maybe on some random island, probably in the Grand Line, and everybody knows, like, he's really strong, but he's also really mysterious, and he doesn't come to town very often. And then somehow, some way, the government found out about him, the Marines enlisted him, and he joined up. And at that point, maybe he was given the powers, like, oh, well, here is a sword that has the gravity power, or here is the gravity fruit, you know, whichever, however. I find it hard to believe that somebody as strong as Fujitora would have been just a regular civilian living in the One Piece world with the powers of, you know, gravity manipulation, and nobody ever noticed it before. The only way that makes sense is if he was a really just isolated hermit that just didn't want anything to do with society. That also makes sense given Fujitora's character. That's the whole reason he blinded himself. He's like, I no longer want to see the evils of the world, or that was his reasoning or something like that. So it would make sense he would blind himself and then, like, seclude himself out in the wilderness, and so that way no one would know about him. But yeah, he certainly is adept at using his power. I mean, he seems confident in just, like, summoning meteors out of the sky. Like, if he just got the fruit recently, you don't think he would be confident enough to, like, well, let's see if I can pull a meteor out of space and crash it down on the planet and see if that'll work. You know, you think he would have, like, all right, I've done this before. I've trained a little bit with this, a little bit, you know, so I don't know about that. So, gravity. Gravity is fun. Now, you know, this is manga. This is fictional. I'm sure Oda does not know a bunch. I'm sure Oda went to a university in Japan and sat in on a few advanced physics lessons to learn about how gravity operates and all the theories and stuff posed by, like, Isaac Newton and Einstein over the years. You know, I'm sure Oda did that in preparation for designing Fujitora's character. Of course he doesn't. It's fictional. You know, like, gravity pulls things down and pushes things away. That's all you need to know. And it can push things down really hard, and it can push things away really hard. That's all you need to know, right? But, I personally take that to be a challenge. So, get ready, Isaac and Albert, and possibly Hook. I'm gonna take it on. You guys think you know all there is about gravity? Well, guess what? I dug up my old physics notes from high school, thanks Mrs. Hoover, and I'm gonna go into this right now and figure out every mystery about gravity. Let's do this! Challenge accepted! okay, can we just go back to calling it magic? I think that's simpler. I'm like, yeah, there's a thing called gravity. How does it work? Magic. Just like it draws things toward it and away from it, and you don't need to know. It depends on the mood it's in, the mood of gravity. That's what controls it. You know what? I'm not even gonna try to do it. I was gonna try to. I was seriously gonna be like, okay, let's do some quick and dirty research on gravity, and let me try to present it in a way. But you know what? I'm not even gonna bother. I'm scrapping the whole thing, because you know what? This is done by people that are way smarter than I am. I took 1 year of physics in high school. That was it. That was my extent of learning about this. I'm not going to insult the works of Newton or Einstein by attempting to give you, like, I looked on Wikipedia for like 30 minutes and now I know. I'm not even gonna bother. Okay, look. Here's what you need to understand, at least in fictional terms of gravity, okay? Fujitora can send out gravitational waves, and whatever those waves come in contact with, he can either increase the gravitational pull, drawing it toward him, or toward, I guess, a specific location. That's probably what the sword is for, so he can direct it, like at a certain target, easier. Probably easier if he was directing it through his own body, so in the case with, like, clashing with Zoro, he can direct all that gravity just down on the tip of his sword, or down directly on Zoro, right? Now, the interesting thing, though, about Fujitora is his range. The dude seems to have the range that gravity has in our universe, which is pretty much infinite, because he didn't know, like, he can't see, and he has really good observation hockey, but you're gonna really dial that up to insane levels if Fujitora, like, could sense that there was a meteor, like, literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of miles above his head. Because it's not like, even a normal human can't just look up and see, like, oh, look, there's a meteor up there. No, it was probably a fair distance away, right? And yet Fujitora was just like, okay, and he just sent his gravitational waves straight up. Maybe he figured, like, they're gonna hit something eventually, and they ended up hitting a meteor and then just got dropped down, all right? Think about the range of that. He was able to lift up all that rubble on Dressrosa, all this, like, massive destruction that was laid out from the birdcage. Like, the entire city was ravaged, and he was able to just, like, with very minimal effort, he was able to do that. So that's, I think, the most dangerous thing at all about the Zushi-Zushi no Mi. Regardless of, if Fujitora has the power or if his sword has the power, the range alone is insanity. Now, Fujitora is a smart dude. They were on Greenbit when he summoned the meteors, so he figured, like, it's an uninhabited island, right? Well, he believed it was uninhabited. The Tontatas lived there, but he didn't know that. So he figured, like, okay, we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere, so I can drop a meteor on this island. It's not like it's gonna level a whole city. But then again, when he was in the gambling house on Dressrosa, he, caused a giant crater just because some hooligans were cheating him out of some money. So, he's not against property damage, but it wasn't like he summoned the meteor to crush the entire city. So, he can, maybe he has a little bit of an anger problem when he gets really pissed off when people cheat him. I'm imagining, considering he is blind, and the whole reason he blinded himself was to not see the evils of the world anymore. Whenever he, interacts with that evil, when people try to cheat him because of his blindness, he gets really mad, and he's like, oh, okay, well, boom, and just creates a giant crater there. The craters themselves are pretty damn deep. It's not just like he's adding a little bit of gravity onto the ground to just make a little bit of a pothole. No, these holes, I think the name of the attack is literally like the Abyss of Hell or something like that, or Fall into Hell. I think it was named in a video game. But yeah, it's like a deep, dark abyss that's like, dozens, if not hundreds of feet and meters down, like you can't see the bottom of it when you fall into those things. So, like, he can either control, like, all right, I'm going to affect a wide area with a lot of gravity, or a wide area with a little bit of gravity, or a small area with a lot of gravity or a small area with not a lot of gravity. It seems like he has the freedom to choose. Like, he doesn't have to exchange it. It's not like, oh, the larger space that I affect, the less amount of gravity I can exude, or I can, negate the gravitational pull. Let's talk about that. Whenever he creates one of those gravity circle waves and they come in contact with something, not only can he increase it, but I guess he can just nullify the effects of our Earth's gravity, because everything is relative here. You gotta pay attention. Gravity is all over the universe, right? But we're currently affected by Earth's gravity, so I would imagine that whatever he comes in contact with, he could just negate the gravitational effects, that, like the G1 that Earth is exuding. He could just negate that and just like, okay, so whoop, and then it starts to float up, and he could probably, I mean, it's something like you gotta figure, like, either this fruit is very kind in giving the user, like, knowledge of gravity, because Fujitora still has to control the output of this, because if he can't get the exact, like, if he's not negating gravity the right way, you think that rock would immediately just, whoo, fly all the way up out of the Earth. So it's like, when he's lifting up all that rubble at Dressrosa, he has to be, like, negating that gravity's effect, or lessening it to a point where, okay, it rises up and it stops after a certain point. When he hops on a rock and he's floating around, he's like, okay, and stop. That's as far as I want to go. Now, another reason people have thought it's not simply gravity, it's maybe something else, is because he can also move stuff around freely. It's not just like, I negate the gravity of my sword, and then it just starts floating upwards constantly. No, it's like, I negate the gravity of my sword up to there, so now it's just floating in the air right there, and now I can also control it. So he controlled the rubble when it fell, and he can lift himself up on that rock and crap, and he can, now, we haven't seen him do it in, like, a way where he can, like, lift up all these rocks and control them all very delicately, like, shoop, 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 I'm attacking you from all these different angles, we haven't seen it like that, but we have seen he is able to, at least a little bit, control the angle and the descent. Like, when he rises a giant rock up, maybe he can, like, roop, roop, and then negate it, and it falls down this direction. And maybe it might be just because he can control the general direction. So if he was fighting with somebody and he wanted the other person just to get away from him, he can just repel them in that direction backwards. So clash, and then poof, they just get sent flying to the other side of town. And so Fujitora's like, I don't want to deal with you right now. He could do it in any direction. Doesn't just have to be up or down. It can be sideways. It can be in any direction he wants. But I still think that might be one of the downsides of the fruit, is he does have to create those gravity circles first, and whatever direction those gravity circles are in, that's the direction it's set. So if he's fighting somebody and he creates a gravity circle to push them back, but let's say they're fast enough and they manage to get out of the way, then, it's going to take him some time to, like, oh, now I have to readjust myself and create another gravity circle in order to stop you. That might be a weakness, but at the same time, you got to remember his range is insane. So if he really wanted to, he could just be like, all right, 50 meters, around me. Like, I'm just gonna make myself the epicenter, and like a 50-meter circle that's all around me, everything just gets pushed directly up, and he could just do that, and then everybody's like, I'm gonna attack you, Fujitora! Oh, what am I gonna? And then drop him, and then there you go. His fruit is incredibly OP. Definitely worthy of an admiral. I wouldn't say quite as OP as, Kizaru's or anything like that, just because Fujitora himself, I mean, people can't really get close to him if he really wants them to stay away, but at the same time, Fujitora can move, like, wicked fast, so I think there's just more applications there. Aside from that, I mean, gravity, well, there's black holes. Could Fujitora make a black hole? Because here's the thing you gotta understand. There's one thing I did gather from this. And on Twitter, one of my fans, one of my artists actually, Andy Pleiades, she was mentioning this when I posted about this, like, hey guys, gravity is complicated. It's like, well, the bare minimum here is, if we're going with Einstein's theory of general relativity here, where it's like, gravity is affected by the curvature of space-time, if we're going with that logic, and Fujitora can manipulate that curvature, then summoning a meteor out of the sky, that's like the low end of the spectrum of what he could do. Like, I don't even know all the stuff he could do. Like, seriously, that's the thing. Maybe somebody that knows more about gravity and shit could let me know about this. Now, once again, I really don't think Oda is gonna go super technical into it. Like, you know, even if Fujitora in theory could create a black hole, I don't think Oda's gonna break down all of the science behind that. We might just have a cool scene where, you know, Fujitora's fighting Blackbeard and Blackbeard's like, Black Vortex, say ha ha. And Fujitora's like, interesting. Black hole! And then he sucks up the darkness, which I'm pretty sure Blackbeard's fruit is supposed to be the black hole of One Piece. Like, it sucks up everything, even light. So maybe it could suck up the gravity waves. Who knows, right? But, yeah, this is certainly one of the more complicated ones, but I guess don't worry too much about the particulars, because I think, I mean, this is also a manga that has to be read by, you know, people of all ages, and Oda's never been somebody to go, like, super, like, you know, math and everything, like, give you equations and stuff. Like, remember Toriko? I remember reading Toriko, and when we found out about Ichirayu's, ability Minority World, and they were explaining how Minority World worked. Like, if you have 10 atoms, then the square root law I'm like, oh, okay, he can make the opposite of things happen. Let's just go with that. He makes ground soft. He makes your lungs stop, you know, retracting. He makes your heart stop pumping blood. He does the opposite of things that they're supposed to do. Let's just roll with that, right? So, okay. Anyway, that was Fujitora's video. I don't know if you learned anything, but, you know, that's it. I wasn't an engineering or physics major. Math scares me, honestly. I don't know why my parents named me Matthew, because math is not my specialty. Mythology and history, that's my specialty. We could talk about that. So, back in the day, there was a guy named Robert Hooke, and he was good friends with Isaac Newton. And you see, those two basically had a little bit of a falling out, and then eventually what that led to was...